Okay, everybody, a lot of people are going to be saying Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday, and I'm on my way to work. Have a good day.
Just one
Nikki,
more
go
on
ahead.
Juneteenth. Does the
Nikki.
president plan to commemorate the holiday today or make any comment on it?
I'm not tracking his signature on a proclamation today. I know this is a federal holiday. I want to thank all of you for showing up to work. We are certainly here. We're working 24/7 right now. Nikki, go ahead.
Actually, that was my question. Will he plan to mark Juneteenth in any way, either today or with an event later on, maybe next week?
Sure. I just answered that question for you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
President Trump has been very clear, and I'll read this ex-post tweet or True Social share with you all, and it says, from the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, listen up, folks. Too many non-working holidays in America. It is costing our country billions of dollars to keep all these businesses closed. The workers don't want it either. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. It must change if we're going to make America great again. And now this, President Trump's approval rating has surged to 56%. Historic. Cue the leftist meltdown.
What, are you kidding me? 56% approval in a brand new Rasmussen poll for President Trump. 56% of the American people think he's doing a great job. That is a landslide. That is awesome. And you consider everything he's up against and everything he's going through and everything that, all the innovation that he's come up with and the constant loud opposition of the media, and his numbers at 56%. You know who that beats? Ronald Reagan at this point in his second term, just 52%. It reminds me, the Gipper and President Trump together. Isn't this an amazing picture? The two of them at some function at the White House. Look at that. We got the 40th president and the 45th and the 47th president all in one spot. It's pretty awesome. So, 56%. That is historic. I always knew that actually President Trump's vision would be popular. What's really not to like about it? When you get through all of the rhetoric and the distortions, make America great again, having borders, not sexualizing children, not getting into forever wars and then not winning them, it just has mass appeal. And you think about where he was a year ago, not even a year ago. He was still going through all of this nonsense, all of this crap. And today, 56% in the polls. That's important. It's not just some number. It's important for him to get his agenda completed, right? People respond. People in the Beltway, they respect a number like that a lot.
More on that in just a moment. Stick with me here, folks.
This is what we should point out. This is Donald Trump's GOP, not Tucker Carlson's. Now, you mentioned what happens when you go against Donald Trump. I mean, this sort of says it all, right? We've had these fights in the past. We had it between Mike Pence and, of course, Donald Trump over the 2020 election. We had it most recently, Elon Musk against Donald Trump. GOP favorables, pre and post-Trump fight. Look at this. Pre-fight, Mike Pence, very well beloved by Republicans, an 84% favorable rating. Look at where he is now, 36%. When you go against Donald Trump and you're Republican, you go down. How about Elon Musk? Remember, he was beloved by Republicans. He had a 78% favorable rating with Republicans. But then he fought Donald Trump, and what happened? He went down. The bottom line is this. Donald Trump's favorable rating stayed steady or actually even went up when he won these battles against Mike Pence or Elon Musk. But if you go up against Donald Trump and you're Republican or Republican affiliated, your favorable ratings with Republicans, they go down, traditionally speaking.
Where do things stand right now for the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Tucker Carlson? And again, I want to point out, Carlson's been very public with what he's saying. Tulsi Gabbard, we haven't heard from her in a little bit.
Yeah, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. The favorable rating among Republicans, you could see it here. Donald Trump beloved, 88% favorable rating among Republicans, near his apex. Now, Tucker Carlson is well liked among Republicans, but not anywhere in the same universe as Donald Trump at 64%, Tulsi Gabbard, 55%. The bottom line is this. As I said at the beginning, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party, not Tucker Carlson's, not Tulsi Gabbard's. Republicans, traditionally speaking, go along with Donald Trump. And as we saw in that last slide, when you go against Donald Trump, you go down while Donald Trump stays quite high.
And we keep on monitoring where Republican support is for the possibility of strikes. What's the latest you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, look, what we see in the data, and I've looked at a number of different polls. They've asked it different ways, but the clear majority of Republicans in any poll that you look, GOP on U.S. airstrikes against Iran, if Iran's pursuing nuclear arms, you see it here. The Republican Party, again, is with Donald Trump, 69% in this particular poll from the Chicago Council that was taken a few months ago, compared to 27% who are opposed. But again, even if you look at the other polling data, it all points in the same direction. Republicans are with Donald Trump on this particular issue, and they're with Donald Trump at large. And when you go against Donald Trump, you go down.
This is Donald Trump's GOP, not Tucker Carlson's. And Trump sitting at 88% favorability with Republicans. He's not just popular, he owns the base. And if you're on the right and come at him, he wins and you lose. And when it comes to Iran, the GOP is backing Trump all the way.
Let's be honest, you would have to be living under a daggum rock if you did not feel the weight of what is happening in our country right now. And everybody's asking, can we really trust our president? Well, let me ask you this. If we can't trust a man who stood on stage and took a bullet for what he believes in, then who can we trust? People keep saying that he's been influenced by the deep state, but y'all, this is a man that has been saying for decades that these foreign wars need to end. What I see is a man that has stuck to his beliefs, has built a business over 50 years, and isn't afraid to change course when something's not working. And that sounds like leadership to me. At the end of the day, we are staring down what just might be one of the biggest challenges our country has ever faced, not just politically, but spiritually. This ain't just about policies, it's about who we are. We are seriously at crossroads, y'all. Chaos or unity. I'm choosing trust, I'm choosing prayer, and I'm choosing to stand with the man that's still standing. There is a lot of noise going on right now, y'all, but when I see a man that has taken hit after hit and still gets back up, I see strength, I see purpose. I'm choosing faith over fear, y'all. And I'm praying for our country with everything that I've got.
Spot on. Everybody's asking, can we really trust our president? Well, let me ask you this. If we can't trust a man who stood on stage and took a bullet for what he believes in, then who can we trust?
A number of your colleagues on the Democrat side have said, well, there's an OLC opinion here. We don't need to talk anymore. There's an OLC opinion. It says you can use the auto pen. The opening paragraph of that OLC opinion says you can use the auto pen, but only when the president directs that you do so under his decision-making power, right? It is very clear again and again that the president actually has to make the decision. That cannot be delegated to a staffer or an advisor. And there's no indication here that anyone other than staff were making these decisions.
I trust my president, President Trump. Always have, always will.
Like to talk about this? Anyone here in the White House talking about this? And if so, if there is something akin to a Trump doctrine, how would you define it?
America first, always. And with that, I think I'll leave you. I know there's a lot of news in the world right now. As you know, our team is always here to answer your questions. And the president, I am sure, will take more questions from you guys at some point this week, as he always does in the effort of transparency. I appreciate your being here.
But Kevin, what about declining GDP?
Get the criminals out of our country, and that's the basis under which we won the election. Core GDP, and this is, you probably saw some numbers today. And I have to start off by saying that's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, this is quarterly numbers, and we came in and I was very against everything that Biden was doing in terms of the economy, destroying our country. And so,
listen up, guys. I'm going to lay this out like I'm talking to my wife, Michelle, my brother on his channel, or anyone else out there, plain and simple. I respect your intelligence, so I'm not dumbing it down like your babies. Let's get into what Trump meant about those declining GDP numbers, okay? How they're calculated and the sneaky ways the media twists things to push a Trump bad, Biden Democrats good narrative. But I think you guys enjoy these types of conversations, right? So you can follow along without all the headache. First, let's talk GDP. It's a number that shows the total value of everything the U.S. economy produces, stuff like what you buy, what businesses invest in, what the government spends, and exports minus imports. They measure it every 3 months, called a quarter, and report it as an annualized rate, which is like guessing what the year would look like if the quarter's trend kept going. And for the first quarter of 2025, January to March, the economy shrank by 0.3%. That's a big shift from the 2.4% growth in the last quarter of 2024. Better question is, why did it tank? A huge spike in imports as businesses rushed to stock up before Trump's tariffs hit dragged the number down big time. And don't get me started on Jay Powell and the bullshit games that he's playing either, okay? Now, Trump's saying, hold on, wait a minute, something ain't right. That's Biden's economy, not mine. He's got a point. He didn't take office until January 2025. So 2/3 of that quarter happened under Joe Biden. Most of the economic activity, spending, investing, all that was shaped by Biden's policies, not Trump's. Maybe not even Biden. Maybe just Elizabeth Warren fucking around with that auto pen. But either way, it's not just that simple. The import surge was partly because businesses were freaking out about Trump's incoming tariffs, which he announced later in April, which have been, how can I put this, cleverly misinterpreted by the mainstream media for all intents and purposes, okay? And so while Trump's right that Q1 isn't fully his plans were already stirring the pot. And it's a mix, not a clear Biden's fault or Trump's fault. We should probably just wait until the next quarter. But here's where the media gets real shady, folks. They love to spin this stuff to fit a narrative. And we know that. And some outlets lean hard into Trump's terrible, Biden was great. And one trick is misleading headlines. And you'll see stuff like Trump's economy craters without a peep about how Q1 was mostly Biden's term. Another tactic is ignoring context. And they won't tell you that GDP looks backward at what already happened or what consumer spending was actually pretty strong despite the dip. They just want you to think everything's falling apart under President Trump. And then there's the loaded language, calling Trump's start chaotic or Biden's economy steady to nudge you into feeling a certain way. And they cherry pick data, blasting the bad GDP number, but downplaying good stuff like job growth because it makes Trump look good, especially if it makes Trump look okay. And the truth is the economy, it's a messy stew. And it's got bits of Biden's policies, Trump's early moves, and global stuff like trade tensions all mixed together. But the media often picks a side. Reports show Biden got 59% positive coverage despite issues like inflation, while Trump's coverage is 92% negative even when he's got wins. And that's just not fair reporting, folks. It's storytelling. If you want the real picture, skip the spin. Look at the raw numbers from the Bureau of Economic Analysis or cross-check different outlets. You guys are smart enough to cut through the noise and see what's actually going on. But wait, there's more.
A deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything. From his auto pen, which I'm sure he knew nothing about some of the things he was supposedly signing.
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
Do you take responsibility for that? Yeah. Do you take responsibility when it drops?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months.
Kristen Welker with NBC News asked President Trump, when does it become your economy? And the answer is quite simple. It's as simple as President Trump is exactly what this country needs. Much like Sophie Cunningham is exactly what the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark, and the WNBA need right now.
It's time for regime change. And I believe that this president should be given a fair amount of leeway to affect that.
It is time for a regime change. And let's be clear. The Obama administration lifted the sanctions and gave Iran all this cash. They funded Hamas. They funded Hezbollah. America should have never given Iran these funds. And it's odd, but strangely enough, I agree with Big Mike. As Michelle Obama says, she is so glad she didn't have a son because it would have been another Barack Obama. And the world doesn't need another Barack Obama. But Maybe the best part about it is President Trump has passed Obama as the most historically significant president of the 21st century, and it is absolutely driving Obama crazy.
Democrats want to know where the Messiah went, but it's not 2008 anymore. It's the golden age. If Barack wants to get back in the ring, he needs to step out of the faculty lounge and get real.
I'd like to hear President Obama making those points with Joe Rogan and Theo Von and and bro pods, not with academics on panels. I just think that he has a higher and better purpose in this moment.
Outkick.com founder Clay Travis. So Clay, they want Barack Obama to get arrested by ICE and chuck Molotov cocktails at him.
Jesse, here's a question. And I would love to hear Barack Obama answer this. He's a sports fan. He coached his daughters in basketball while he was president of the United States. I think a lot of dads and certainly a lot of moms respect that. I've coached my kids in virtually every sport at some point in time as I've been raising them. Why has Barack Obama never come out, if he cares so much about speaking truth, and said, hey, men who pretend to identify as women should not be able to win women's championships? He doesn't ever have to run for office again. Gavin Newsom came out and tried to say it. If they want Barack Obama to bring some sanity back to the Democrat Party, you have to start by saying things that he 100% believes, but that he's afraid to say. 2008 Obama and 2012 Obama would have never said that men pretending to be women can be champions when he was coaching his little league girls in basketball.
He's scared of his wife. He's the typical I'm scared of my wife kind of guy.
Hey, to be fair, a lot of men watching this program right now are afraid of their wives. So, I'll give him a little bit of a pass.
Yeah, but they're also not married to Michelle Obama. And she can be scary.
I do think,
and he's admitted she's scary.
I do think when you are trying to lecture America on talking and speaking the truth, and you aren't willing to acknowledge blatant lies being spread by your party, you are actually contributing to the arena of misinformation and disinformation. Here's the other thing, Jesse, that I think Obama is starting to grapple with. Donald Trump has replaced him as the most consequential politician of the 21st century.
Yes.
And I don't think he's really come to grips with that yet, Jesse. From the moment that Trump came down that escalator in 2015, all the way through this term, he's going to dominate the first quarter century of this era, of this 100 years. And I think Obama thought he was going to be the star of the 21st century. And instead, Trump is, and I think it bothers him. I think he cares a great deal about his legacy.
Right, and his legacy is in tatters, and now his legacy is getting cleaned up in the Middle East again. All right, Clay Travis, good to see you. Scared of his wife, Clay Travis. A smart man, I guess.
Only some of the time.
I'll talk to you later.
But hear this. Justin, Russian President Putin agrees with Donald Trump that had he been president, the war with Ukraine would have never have happened. And here we see Putin. I'm ready to meet with Zelensky, but any agreement must be signed by Ukraine's legitimate authorities. Russia wants to end the conflict in Ukraine as soon as possible, ideally through peaceful means. Black is white. And all credit to our fearless leader, President Trump.
He also on many occasions said that if I were the president, there would be no war in Ukraine. And he's right in this regard. And I will tell you why. Because in one of our latest conversations with President Biden, I told him that, well, I'm not going to speak about the details of that conversation, but I told him that we must not bring it to the phase of armed conflict. We need to resolve it via peaceful means, and we need to make the current Ukrainian authorities to satisfy the demands of the citizens who live in the east of the country, to stop the genocide of the Russian speakers, to stop violating human rights there. Something the previous administration mentioned, the human rights authorities mentioned a lot of times.
And I feel like this may be even worse than Jerome Powell, FOMC, interest rate sabotage, whereas this bad intel and deceptive, almost attempted coup-like pit President Trump against Tulsi Gabbard and his base, whereas some of you fell for it and took the bait, but ultimately, it's very clear to me, the intent always has been and will forever be to try and break up MAGA. This latest attempt was particularly heinous because their intended outcome was for President Trump to authorize the genocide of innocent people by attempting to get him to launch nukes on Iran. Just sick. These people are so dirty, and it's not just the left. It's the fake right. MAGA only when it suits them paid shills and voices for hire.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
I don't care what Tulsi said. And the intelligence community is wrong. And if you know, you know, folks, but stick with me here because we're going places and we're going to close out and end on a high note. I want you guys to take care. I want all of y'all to take care, stay safe, stay informed, and God bless.
Do you believe you can get it to the president's desk sometime in the month of July? Something that you could vote for?
I think we can do it before the August recess, yes, and maybe even sooner than that. It depends on how quickly we can resolve these issues. You know, then the minute we change something, the House screams, well, we can't pass that. So again, that's why I always argued for a multiple step approach, but the president wanted, you know, the one big beautiful bill. We're dealing with that. Yeah. It is more complex. It is more difficult to pass. But again, the good news is we are all dedicated to helping the president achieve his agenda, to succeed, to have America succeed. But I'll continue to point out my higher loyalty is to our children and grandchildren. We are mortgaging their future. It's unconscionable. It's immoral. It has to stop. And we've got to work diligently at that. And I need everybody to admit the problem. We need to properly define it. That's why I issued that report. Here are the numbers. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'm going to be talking with Kevin Hassett later this morning. Yeah, okay. I'll be talking to Kevin Hassett later this morning. He can dispute. I don't know if he's going to. I would think if I got anything really wrong, I would have already heard about it by now. But again, I'm just forcing everybody to take a business-like approach. Let's actually look at the numbers. You know, people say they want to balance the budget. Okay, well, how are you going to do it?
Right.
When you look at that report, you kind of go, well, we're not exactly on the path of balancing the budget yet. What's it going to take?